give Mr. Garnier y'all's attention. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you. The first thing I'm guessing that this is a required class, because I don't know why anybody would sign up for a Saturday class. They absolutely had to do it. So I'm actually like literally fresh off of an airplane from New Orleans. I had to go and attend my cousin's 50th birthday party, so I literally just got off the plane and came straight here. So I had you guys wait. I apologize for that. You know, when I talk, I don't like to necessarily be too formal. So a lot of what I talk about is going to be a combination of some information and education, but also some inspiration and motivation. So hopefully you guys can get something out of it. They say when you give a talk, in the beginning you either want to tell a joke or a story. I realized pretty early that I'm not that funny, so I'm going to spare you guys the joke and I'm going to just tell a quick story, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. When I was young, in elementary school, I used to catch the bus home with my best friend and walk home every single day. We would get off the bus and we would walk about 2 blocks to our house. And during that walk, we would always pass the same house that had one of the most vicious dogs you could imagine. It was huge, it was just vicious, it was drooling at the mouth, but it was on a chain and it was behind a fence. So every single day we would pass this house, we would instigate the dog. We would stomp our feet at it and bark at it, and it would just come charging straight at us. And then eventually the chain would jack its neck and pull it backwards. And then it would get up and it would just start barking at us viciously. And every single day we would pass the house and we would instigate the dog and provoke it, and it would come charging at us full speed. And the chain would pull its neck back and it would get up and it would start barking. Well, eventually the dog got smart. And we would pass by the house and we would instigate and provoke the dog. And instead of taking off full speed, it started to walk. And it would walk right up until the point where the chain would normally pull its neck back. And it would stop and it would start barking at us. And so every day we would pass, it would do the same thing. The dog would get up gently, walk right up to the point where the chain would normally pull its neck, and it would start barking at us. One day we got off the bus and we were headed home in normal routine. We saw the house and we started stumping our feet and barking at the dog. And what we didn't realize is that the chain was off and the gate was open. And the dog was looking straight at us. And we were paralyzed with fear. And the dog was looking at everything that he had been dreaming about for years. Nothing but space and opportunity to do everything that it had thought about. The dog got up and it walked right up until the point where the chain would pull his neck back, and it stopped and it started barking. The dog was free and he didn't know it. He was mentally conditioned to believe that he was in bondage. And the reason why I tell that story, especially for professionals, is because many times we are free, I'll say all the time, to pursue our dreams, to pursue our goals, to pursue our missions, but society many times constrains us mentally to think that we're in bondage. But in reality, everything that we want is right in front of us, and the only thing that's stopping us is space and opportunity. And so I always keep that story in the back of my mind when I feel like there's something holding me back. So hopefully somebody got something out of it. She mentioned a little bit about myself. I told you guys I'm in wealth management. I've been doing that for 18 years. I love what I do. I manage, some of the wealthy clients in the world, but I started off just as a traditional advisor doing $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 IRAs. And at every point in my career, I challenged myself to get better, to develop a skill set, and to move up. And now it's not uncommon for me to advise clients that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It happens all the time. But more recently, I just published my first book called How to Sell When Your Clients Don't Look Like You. And it's based on a concept that I created called diversity selling. Diversity selling, by definition to me, is the concept of transcending race, background, culture, sex, or any other societal difference that you can think of to build meaningful business relationships with anybody. We all come into business or any setting with preconditions of what we think of ourselves and what other people may think of us. And many times in business, that can hold you back. And so my goal is to teach people how to overcome that. Because when I started in business, not only was I a black man, but I was young. I was 21 years old. And so I was fighting age, having to do business with people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And mentally, I was also fighting race. And I had to learn how to overcome that, not only outside, but also within myself to achieve the level of success that I wanted. So we're talking about personal branding. And, you know, I tell people this all the time. You are the brand. You are you are the brand. If you think about any identifiable brand, I see a whole bunch of Apple computers up here. Any brand that you can think of has its own identity. They have their mission statement, they have their vision, but they have their own identity. And you know what you're going to get when you buy that brand. And many companies fail when they try to do something outside of their identity. If McDonald's started selling chicken wings, I don't know how long that would last. If Apple started to sell clothing, that's outside of their identity. And so personally, I'm going to talk about a few points today to help you identify your brand and who you are. And hopefully you can understand and get a sense of that so you can stay true to that when you get out into the world and professionally and know exactly what it is that you want to do. How many people are in a profession that they know they want to be in right now? Okay. Follow-up question. How many people have achieved everything they want in that profession? None of us have, right? Because we should always be aspiring for more. So there's 3 quick points that I like to point out to help along the path of building, understanding, and building your brand. And it's very simple. Know yourself, grow yourself, and show yourself. And I'll hit on each of those really quickly. The first is know yourself. And to me, this is the foundation of anything that you want to do in life. You have to know who you are and what it is that you want. Not what other people tell you you want or who you are, but who you are. And I always start that conversation with something that I call tags. Tags are talents, abilities, gifts, and skills. It is a fact that 99.9% of all of our DNA is exactly the same as every other person on earth. Exactly the same. Only 0.1% of our DNA is what makes us different, what makes us unique, what gives you the hair you have, the body build you have, the way you think, the way you talk. 0.1% of your DNA is what makes you a unique individual. And in my opinion, it is that 0.1% where your purpose lies. Who you are and what it is that you want to be, because that's the only thing that makes you different. Without that 1%, 0.1%, all of us would be exactly alike. And so it is that 1.1% that makes you unique and makes you different. And so I talked about talents, abilities, gifts, and skills. We all have it. We all have something that distinguishes us from everyone else. Now, a lot of times when I talk about talents, abilities, gifts, and skills, people immediately think of tangible talents and gifts. Athletic ability, physical abilities. You know, some people are good at math. Some people are, good at science. And all of those absolutely are talents, abilities, gifts, and skills. But I like to ask people to look a little bit deeper than that sometimes. You know, the ability to communicate information in a way to make it simple, like a professor or a teacher does. That's a talent, ability, or a gift. Someone that's a nurturer, that immediately makes people feel comfortable. That's a talent or ability, skill, or gift. You may have a tendency to where all of your friends come to you with their problems. That's a talent or ability or skill or gift. And so Whatever it is that you have, I just ask that you look a little bit deeper to help distinguish what makes you unique or different. Because that's going to be the foundation when you pursue your own brand in growing your career. Now, once you kind of feel like you know what that is or you discovered what that is, the next thing I talk about is passion. Because you can be good at something and not really like it or care about it. You don't have any passion. To me, passion is an internal fire. It's an igniter. It motivates you when there's no motivation. When you're passionate about something, you don't have to set your alarm clock to wake up and do it. Passion is its own alarm clock. When you're passionate about something, even when adversity comes, you're willing to take that adversity head on because it's something that you care about. If you're good at something and you have no passion, the moment adversity happens, you're like, wasn't gonna work anyway, I'm done. And so passion is its own igniter. So talents, abilities, and gifts, and then passion. And once you kind of get an idea of those things, what you're good at, what you have abilities for, and what you're passionate about, that's where your purpose lies. And to me, purpose is not what you get or give to the world, or what you get is your impact on other people in the world. Purpose has nothing to do with what you get out of the deal. It's what you give to the world. So if that's in your profession, and you work in a profession where you're selling something or you're making a product or you're advising people, your purpose has to do with how you impact those people in that profession. It has nothing to do with what you get out of it, you know, how much you make, what salary you make. You know, we can run a laundry list of people who make millions of dollars who aren't happy with themselves because they don't know what their purpose is. So, talents, abilities, gifts, passion, and purpose. To me, that's the first step. Know yourself. After you know yourself or you feel like you're confident in knowing where you want to pursue, you have to have a plan. You have to plan it out. When you have any company, when we talk about a brand, has a plan. Apple didn't just jump out with the iPad. They probably had an idea about that, but they started with the iPhone, or they started with the iPod. Then they moved to the iPhone. Then they moved to the iPad. And so anything that you do, you have to have a plan to do it. You don't just jump out and you know, roll it out. You know, I mentioned to you, I just published my first book. That's probably one of the most difficult things that I had to do because it took planning and it took commitment. I didn't just jump out and do it. And so the way that I help people make a plan is 3 simple steps. Write it down, break it down, and knock it down. Very simple. Write it down, break it down, knock it down. You probably hear this all the time. When you plan something, the best thing to do is to write it down. Put it on paper, make it tangible. When you write down things, you put it into the universe, you make it a reality. If it just stays in your mind, it's just an idea. Once it's on paper, it's a plan. Everybody has great ideas. Everybody. Everybody in here has multi-million-dollar ideas. But it's not real until you put it on paper and make it a plan. Write it down. Once you write it down, to me this is the most important part. Break it down. Because if you say, I want to be CEO of my company, and right now you're working in administrative staff, that seems like an impossible feat. So you got to break that down. You have to break that goal down into steps. I'm in administration right now, but I want to be in management. What do I have to do to get in management? Do I have to get my MBA? I get my MBA. Now I can pursue management. Once I'm in management, how do I get to regional management? Do I have to have certain relationships with people? Do I have to have certain skill sets or qualifications? If so, I'm going to pursue that. Now I'm in regional management. Now what do I need to do to move up to district or whatever? So whatever your goal is, you have to break it down into doable, actionable steps to make it smaller than this huge, big feat. So, you know, I think she mentioned that I'm from New Orleans. So how many people have taken a drive from Houston to New Orleans before? Almost everybody. I can tell you right now, from Beltway East to the exit I have to take is exactly 320 miles. From Beltway East to the Texas state line is 120 miles. From the Texas state line to Lafayette is 100 miles. From Lafayette to where I need to be is another 120 miles. I know that I've broken it down. So when I take a drive, it's not just this 5-hour drive from Houston to New Orleans. And mentally, I break it down to make it into easy, actionable steps to make the drive doable for you. So whatever goals that you may have, they may seem impossible until you break them down into actionable steps to do it. And then the last thing is very simple, knock it down. You gotta knock each step down one by one. Don't skip steps, get to it, knock it down. So the first step is to know yourself. Know what you want to be. Know what you want to get out of this. Know what your brand is. What do you want to identify as? But once you know, the next step is to grow. Know yourself, grow yourself. The most dangerous water that you can be in is stagnant water. Water that does not move. Because stagnant water attracts bacteria, fungi. Stagnant water is the worst water to be in because it's not doing anything. And so even if you know your talents, abilities, and gifts, even if you know your purpose, even if you have all of these things, if you're not growing, then you're not. So growth has to do with pursuing those passions, pursuing those goals in a way where you're constantly improving yourself. Educationally, intellectually, personally, physically, at all times you have to be pursuing progress or getting better. Otherwise you become stagnant. And if you're stagnant, there's other people behind you that are passing you by. They're passing you by. Any brand, if Apple would have just stopped with the iPod, Samsung, all of these other people would have, LG, they would have just passed them on by. If they would have just stopped at the iPhone, it would have been passed on by. You know who got passed by? Blockbuster Video. They never innovated, right? They had an opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million. And Netflix is worth, I don't know how many $100 billion they just closed the last Blockbuster store. They had one in the country, I think they just closed it. See? So stagnation is almost like death, professionally. So you have to grow yourself. There's a few ways you can do that. You're in pursuing your MBA now, so that's a form of growth. Educational, you absolutely want to grow. But you also want to grow intellectually outside of just education. You want to grow as a person. A method I like to use, I call it mind confusion. How many people in here work out at all? You work out. So you may be familiar with the term muscle confusion. Muscle confusion is when you constantly change up your workouts to confuse your muscles in a way that forces them to grow. What happens is when you change your workouts, you stimulate your muscles in different ways, and it forces them to grow because they have to react in different ways. Mind confusion is the same way. We all get into a routine where we watch the same shows, we talk to the same people, we read the same things, we go to the same places. Mind confusion is putting yourself outside of those comfort zones and challenging your mind constantly in ways that it's not used to. Take a different ride home from work. Talk to someone who you wouldn't normally engage with. Read something that wouldn't normally interest you. Watch a channel or a show that's opposing to your beliefs or views. All of those things, what they're going to do is they're going to challenge your way of thinking. They're going to challenge your mind. They're going to confuse you in a way that forces you to think more. And if you've ever been in a creative state where you're just thinking and all kinds of thoughts come to your mind, that's a wonderful state to be in. Because what happens is you ask more questions. And then you pursue more knowledge and more understanding. So mind confusion, for me, is the best way for me to grow outside of education and simply being intellectual. So know yourself, grow yourself, and really lastly, just show yourself. And what I mean by show yourself is be confident in who you are and be consistent in who you are. Confidence comes from within. You've done everything that you're supposed to do. You're confident in what your purpose is. You've written down your goals. There should be no reason why you're not proud or confident in your mission and your goal. You should not be shy or apologetic about it. But once you show yourself and you have confidence, you also want to be consistent. I drink Starbucks all the time. For whatever reason, I like coffee. But it doesn't matter if you go to a Starbucks on the north side, the south side, in California, or in Beijing. You're going to have the exact same experience every time you go. When you're building your brand, you want to be consistent with who you are. Everyone that you deal with, interact with, work with, you want to have a consistency so that no matter where you are or who you are around, they have the similar or same experience. Just like going into Starbucks on the other side of the world. Because if they don't have that same experience, and if there's inconsistency, then there's really no brand. It's just a name. If I went into a Starbucks somewhere else and it was like a McDonald's, it would be different. It's not the same. There's no consistency. So when you're building your brand professionally, the people that you interact with, I don't care if it's the CEO or the maintenance worker, you want to be consistent with how you project yourself, how you conduct yourself, and how you represent yourself. Because you never know when the maintenance worker and the CEO are going to cross paths and they bring you up in conversation. And if there's no consistency, there's no trust. You're not going to trust Starbucks or Apple if their products aren't consistent. If you don't have the same experience with the Apple computer that you do with the iPhone in terms of speed, in terms of efficiency, there's not going to be any trust. And when you're building a brand, it's all about people trusting who you are and what they see. Not just the name on the building, but what's inside. So know yourself, grow yourself, and show yourself. And if you can do those things professionally, I believe that you can pursue anything that you want to do, anything that you want to do.